Hello there, my name is Megan and I am the Pony Club Centre Coach here at Widbrook Equestrian Centre. These mini-series are being put together whilst we're on lockdown so that we can keep working towards our badges and increase our knowledge during these difficult times. This mini-series are going to focus on the Lorinery badge, which is bitting and bits, so I hope you enjoy them. Hello Pony Clubbers. So we're now on to week 2 of the Lorinery badge. Week 1, I hope it was clear, I think part of it may have not been, was an overview of all the different areas that we're going to be covering. So we had a look at the different families of bits, had a look at the 7 points of control. We also had a look at the anatomy of the horse's mouth, including their teeth. And then we also had a look at bitting in practice, the practical application, so looking at the bridle, the parts of the bridle, and how to put the bridle on the horse, and various fitting things to take into consideration, and a few pre-bitting things to consider, such as the conformation of the horse's mouth and what you need the bit for. This week we're going to dive in to looking a little bit more at the families of bits. So that's what we're going to focus on this week. So we're going to have a look at the 3 main families of bits, the snaffle bits, the curb bit and the Pelham family. Okay, so that's what we're going to have a look at this week. We're also going to have a look at the 7 points of pressure, that the 7 points of control, that the where the bit has that pressure on the horse's face, so whether it's the cheeks, the lips, that kind of thing. So we're also going to have a look at that, and we will also have a look at the why we bit our ponies as well, because we had a look at how we bit them but not why we bit them. So that's what we're going to cover this week. Okay, so now we've talked about what a bit is, we now want to look at why we bit our ponies. So there are several reasons why we might want to bit our horse or pony. So one is for control. So by having the piece of the metal in their mouth, the bit in their mouth, we can use that when we want to stop the horse by pulling on the reins. And that puts pressure, depending on what type of bit it is, but it'll put pressure in various points of the mouth. And we teach our horses that that means we want them to stop or to slow down. We use that in conjunction with our seat aids, but generally speaking we use the bit to ask them to slow down. So we can also use it for directional control, so if we ask our horse to turn left, we can do that with the left rein, and we can also ask them to turn right with the right rein, so for our directional control. As a reminder from last week, as you can see in this picture, shows the bitting pressure points that different bits may put pressure on when we use them. So we can see in this picture that we've got the lips and the corners of the mouth, the bars of the mouth, the tongue, the roof of the mouth, the nose, the chin groove and the poll. So all of those could potentially be have pressure put on them depending on the type of bit used. Okay, so the first family of bits we're going to look at is the snaffle bit. And in the image here we can see a selection, just a small selection of some snaffle bits. So the snaffle is the basic schooling bit and the one most suitable for young horses. It is made with a variety of mouthpieces and rings or cheeks, each variation having a slightly different action in the horse's mouth. The single jointed snaffle is the most widely used, which you can see in this picture on the right hand side. You have a loose ring on the top on the right hand side and an Eggbert just below it. Okay. Snaffles act principally on the corners of the mouth and the lips, the bars of the mouth and the tongue. So those are your snaffles. So now we're going to have a look at each of these different designs in a little bit more detail. The first bit we're going to look at is the loose ring single jointed snaffle, which is pictured here. So as you can see, the rings on the end here are are loose in the sense that they can move freely through the mouthpiece, which gives some play to the horse. You can also see that there's just one single joint in the middle, so that that bit will, in effect, when it's in the horse's mouth, it can close up on itself over the tongue, which creates what's known as the nutcracker effect. Not all horses appreciate that action, so that's why we've got other mouthpiece options. But this is one of your most basic types of bits, and it's one you're likely to see fairly regularly. It can be made of metal, as this one is. This one's stainless steel, or it can be made of rubber, nylon, or synthetic material. And its action is principally on the lips and the corners of the mouth, the bars of the mouth, and the tongue. And it's a fairly mild bit, which is why you'll often see it's a good one for young horses, novice riders, and as a general all-round schooling bit. The second bit we're going to look at is the Eggbert Snaffle. Again, another one that's useful with young horses and for novice riders, and you'll see this on plenty of the riding school horses here at Widbrook, because it is a nice bit, a nice simple bit, and a very common one for that reason. It has a similar action to the loose ring that we previously saw, but because it's got a fixed cheek, as you can see, unlike the loose ring, it can't move through the mouthpiece, it's fixed on there. It gives a little bit less play for the horses, but also stops potential downside of pinching. So the loose ring can have the downside of pinching on the lips when the ring moves freely through the mouthpiece, whereas that risk is removed with the Eggbert Snaffle. It's termed an Eggbert Snaffle. As you can see, the cheek pieces look like egg-shaped. So if you're looking at bits and wondering if it's an Eggbert or a different type, look to see whether or not they look slightly egg-shaped, and you can see that in this image here. Again, we've got the single joint in the middle, and this bit here is made of stainless steel. The Eggbert cheek pieces can be used with some of the different mouthpieces that we're going to look at in some of the next images. This image shows a loose ring snaffle, but this one's a double jointed version. So you can see that the mouthpiece there has a French link in the centre there, so it looks like a little figure of 8. Now this one's a flat link in the middle, so is of the milder variety, so it can also be known as a French Spreadoon. So the central plate is rounded and lies smoothly and flat across the tongue. So the action of this bit is on the lips and corners of the mouth, the bars of the mouth, and on the tongue, but the nutcracker action of the single jointed snaffles we discussed earlier is avoided. So this sometimes makes it a satisfactory bit on a horse with a large tongue or a narrow lower jaw. Here we can see an Eggbert Snaffle with the same French link in the middle, so again a double jointed mouthpiece but with the Eggbert cheeks. So the double joint there can be used with a variety of different cheek pieces. It doesn't make a difference, it's mainly the mouthpiece that we're looking at. There is another type of double jointed snaffle, well, there are several different types. This is where you've got the flat French link version, but you can also get lozenges and other types joining in the middle. But one type you must look out for and be careful of is the Dr. Bristol, which is a more stronger type. So the central plate of the Dr. Bristol is rectangular with squared sides and is set at an angle so that it presses into the tongue. The action on the tongue and corners of the mouth can be quite severe as a result. So it's only the French link or a lozenge that's permitted in dressage competitions, although the FEI has recently announced that the French link, as shown here, is going to no longer be allowed in international eventing competitions, so it will be something to watch out for whether or not dressage or national competitions follow suit. If it does, then it's going to be important to consider what type of double jointed bits will be allowed in the future if the French link as pictured here is no longer allowed. But the Dr. Bristol that is set at an angle is currently not allowed in dressage. So this image shows us a hanging cheek snaffle, again with the French link in the middle. So again another double jointed bit, but it's the cheek pieces we're interested in here. So this bit is suspended rather than resting in the horse's mouth. This is suitable for horses who dislike too much weight on the tongue. The action is on the lips and bars of the mouth and to a lesser degree on the tongue. Some people also suggest that this bit has a slight amount of pole pressure, just simply because there is some space between where it attaches to the cheek piece, and where it attaches in the mouth there. So it's just something to bear in mind, that some people do consider it to be quite a useful bit if you've got a horse that you want a dressage legal bit on, but it just needs a little bit more control in the dressage arena. Okay, this bit here is a straight bar snaffle. So you can either have ones that are straight or slightly curved. This one is slightly curved. The mullen mouth, or half moon as it's sometimes called, is the one that is slightly curved. So the action of this bit, whether it's made of metal, vulcanite or synthetic material or rubber, and this one is more of a plastic type bit, is primarily on the lips and corners of the mouth and the tongue. Traditionally it's used for horses with damaged mouths, but in the long term it is of little advantage, because the solid mouthpiece produces an indeterminate rather than a precise feel when an aid is applied. Many horses can learn to draw the tongue back or put it over this type of bit, and are able to hold the mouthpiece away from the bars by pushing up with the tongue. This image here just gives us an indication of a couple of other types of snaffle bits. There are many different types of mouthpiece and cheek pieces out there of snaffles. So in the top left hand corner there we have a snaffle with cheeks. So this has almost the same actions as the Eggbert or the loose ring snaffles, but it will not pull through from one side to the other or pinch the horse's mouth. You can use keepers to attach the cheeks of the bit to the cheek piece of the bridle, which then means there's minimal movement of the bit in the mouth. So this sort of bit can help with your turning. That one is a straight bar version. On the top right, you've got a loose ring snaffle there on a straight mouthpiece that's got something in there that's called bit guards, or some people call them biscuits, which is pieces of rubber that stop the bit from pinching the horse's lips. It just provides a guard between the lip and the cheek piece there. Unfortunately, they are not allowed in dressage competitions, so that it means that you can't use them in a dressage competition, but they are useful for schooling at home. The left bottom picture there is a multi-ring snaffle. So you can attach the cheek piece to the top ring, and then you can either ride with two reins, so have one rein on the large ring and one on the bottom ring, or you can decide to have one rein and either put it on the large snaffle piece, the large ring, or on the smaller ring at the bottom. And the idea of the smaller ring is to give a little bit of leverage to allow you to control your horse a little bit better, so it just makes the bit a bit stronger. Now on the right here, some people would put this into a different bitting group altogether, which we'll see in a bit. Now this bit is a gag snaffle, so this is a very strong bit. The action of this bit is on the lips and corners of the mouth, the tongue and the pole, and it can be very severe. It should always be used with two reins. The Pony Club manual says it may be used with one or two pairs of reins, but ideally you have two. One fixed as if it was a normal snaffle onto the ring, and then you would also onto the main ring, and then you would also fix another rein onto the bottom ring that's attached to the rope that goes up through the bit there. That's your gag rein and should only be used in emergencies. And the idea with the gag is that it pulls the bit up in the horse's mouth, raises the horse's head up. So if you have a horse that chucks its head on the floor and runs off with you, that's when you might use a gag. You see a lot of polo players will use gags because they want their horses to stop very quickly, and they use their horses do go along with their heads in the air, as that's what they prefer. So it's a strong bit. Some people put it in a category of its own, a family of its own, rather than in with snaffles, but it is a gag snaffle. Here we've got more examples of some snaffle bits. So on the left hand side we've got three different examples of bits with cheeks. So all three of those have the cheeks. They're just made of different materials or have different design features. So the top one there has got either rubber or vulcanite material on either side of the single joint. The one in the middle there has got what's known as breaker keys, so it's known as a breaking bit. It's got keys hanging down from the middle there. The idea of that is when you're breaking in a young horse, it encourages the horse to play with the bit, so it plays with those keys there, and that helps it to relax and salivate when it's got the bit in. The one at the bottom there looks to have copper. I'm not sure if they're rollers or if they're just copper pieces on there. The idea being that the horse will salivate on that, and it might, if it's rollers, so rollers have pieces that are in the horse's mouth, just makes the bit a little bit stronger, helps you to control the horse. The top right is a D-ring snaffle. So as I said earlier, when you're looking to see whether it's an Eggbert Snaffle or a different type, this is one that you could end up mistaking for an Eggbert. So you can see that the cheek pieces in comparison, they're not egg-shaped, they're D-shaped, like the letter D. So that just helps you to identify the difference there. So the D-ring just provides a little bit like the cheeks, but not as pronounced. So it helps again a little bit with turning, a little bit more than the Eggbert, but not quite as much as a full cheek. Then below that you've got another multi-ring bit. Some people refer to this as a Dutch gag, but it actually doesn't work like a gag bit in that it doesn't raise the horse's head. It actually helps to lower the horse's head. It's more like a Pelham, which we'll look at later, or a curb bit without the curb chain on, in that it provides that leverage depending on where you put the rein. So the top small ring is where you put the cheek piece, and then you have three options. You can either put your rein on the large ring or one of the two lower rings, or even better, you can ride it in this bit with two reins, have your main rein on the large ring, and then choose one of the ones below and ride in it as if it was a double bridle or a Pelham. So again, that helps to lower the horse's head, and it provides you a bit of leverage for a stronger horse. And that's the same for the bit at the bottom as well. So that's again same multi-ring bit, or a Dutch gag as some refer to it as. And then between those two bits you've just got a straightforward loose ring snaffle. So I hope that was helpful in looking at snaffle bits. As you can see, there is a wide variety available, and you can mix and match when it comes to cheek pieces, mouthpieces, and materials. Materials we'll look at a little bit more in more detail in a later video. But this only scratches the surface of how many different types there are. If you're interested in finding out more about different types of bits, have a look online, Google different types of snaffle bits, or when we're out of lockdown, let me know and we'll get out one of the bits and bitting books, and there's some very good ones at Widbrook that cover all sorts of different types of snaffles, some really quite weird and wonderful ones, and we can discuss those and have a look at how they work. But we've covered the main snaffles that are available and what they do. Okay, so the second family of bits is the curb bit, used with a double bridle. So as you can see here, we've got the double bits. So at the bottom there we've got the Bradone, which is a smaller version of the snaffle. So here we have a loose ring Bradone. So acts in exactly the same way as a normal snaffle, but it's lighter and has a thinner mouthpiece. The reason for this is that it's being used with the curb bit, which is, as you can see in the picture, is above the snaffle bit. So the curb bit here has, as you can see, it has a curb chain, and it should also be used with a lip strap as well, but there's not a picture of a lip strap in here, but it would attach, as you can see, on the shank of the bit, which is below the mouthpiece. You can see there's a ring at the bottom, and above that ring and between the mouthpiece there is a loop. Now that loop is where on both sides the lip strap would go. The curb bit acts mainly on the bars of the mouth, the tongue and the pole. So the cheeks of the bit act as a lever to increase the action, and the curb chain means it goes into the curb groove and stops the leverage going too far back. Okay, so it stops that, and that should be at a 45-degree angle. So the longer the upper and lower cheeks, the lever arms, the more severe the bit is. Now here we have an example of a sliding cheek curb bit. You can see that the mouthpiece is not fixed on the arms of the bit, the shanks. You can see that it will move up and down on that little piece there. You can see particularly on the right side of the bit there, on the right side just underneath the mouthpiece, you can see where it could slide down. So this one gives a fractionally delayed and less precise action. But the slight movement of the mouthpiece encourages the horse to champ the bit. So this curb bit here is of the fixed variety. So as you can see, in comparison to the last image, you can see that the mouthpiece is very much attached to the levers, so to the shanks of the bit. Again, everything else is the same. You've got the shanks of the bit with the ring at the bottom where your rein attaches, and you've got your curb chain as well, with your curb hooks that attach to the curb bit at the top there. Here we've got an Eggbert Spreadoon. So the last bit had a loose ring Bradone, so that you had the movement in both types of both bits that you have in the horse's mouth, whereas this you've got fixed in both. So you've got your fixed Eggbert and you've got your fixed curb bit. Now this mouthpiece on the curb here is of the mullen mouth variety. So the mouthpiece of the curb bit, as we can see here, this is the sliding cheek variety. So we just had a look at the fixed cheek, which has the mullen mouth. Now this is more common. This is a tongue groove or a port. So the tongue groove is a raised arch in the centre of the mouthpiece that allows comfortable room for the tongue. So the arch may be of variable height, and this is the most usual form of curb bit. Okay, so that's a tongue groove there in this particular bit. You can also get a port, which is a U-shaped curve in the centre of the mouthpiece, which varies in height and size. And it should not be confused with a tongue groove, because the higher variety is pressed forward on the roof of the mouth when the curb bit rein is used, and being very severe and not suitable for general use. So this is a tongue groove which allows space for the tongue, which is different to the port. Okay. Now, using the double bridle. So a double bridle should only be used when the horse has been trained in a snaffle bridle to accept the bit with confidence and happiness. While the Bradone acts in the same way as a snaffle, the curb can act simultaneously to give a more refined aid that helps to maintain a supple poll and a relaxed jaw. The curb rein should be applied only when required and should not be used continuously. Use it tactfully and never without a Bradone, as its continuous action would soon deaden a horse's mouth. Now this is in relation to English style riding. If you see images of Western riders only riding on a curb only, that's because their style of riding is very much less reliant on the reins than the English style. So that's completely different in that regard. With English riding, we should always use the curb with a snaffle bit, with the Bradone. Our next family is the Pelham family. So the Pelham is a combination of the curb and Bradone on one mouthpiece. So the idea is to get the actions of both the bits used in a double bridle into one mouthpiece. So the Bradone and curb reins are attached to the separate rings, thus attempting to make one bit perform the duties of two. In principle, this is not a sound policy, but experience has shown that some horses will go better in a Pelham than they will in anything else. Okay, so you can see here it's got the curb chain, just as we saw with the other curb bits, and it's attempted here to have a snaffle bit rein, as you can see closer to the mouthpiece. So you've got your larger circle there, for your larger ring rather, for your snaffle rein, and then your bottom ring there for your curb rein, and you've still got your lip strap hole as well, and you've got your curb rein. Now, in terms of the length of the shank, you can see here this is a very short one. So this is a Hartwell Pelham, and the idea of this one is it's supposed to be very mild in comparison to some other Pelhams, in the sense that it's got a lot of room there for the tongue. So it's got a tongue groove, and it's also got the short shank, so it doesn't put too much pole pressure or too much leverage on the horse, this particular one. So while ideally you should use 2 reins with the Pelham, sometimes you'll see a single rein is used, which is attached using leather roundings, which are themselves attached to the rings on the cheeks of the bit. But this is not recommended for those who wish to take advantage of the correct action of either bit, but it has proved advantageous in some cases. For example, if you see a horse using a Pelham for jumping, you will often see they'll use leather roundings to help them to control the horse cross country or show jumping without having to worry about too many pairs of reins. So you'll sometimes see that. Now, it also says, for the Pony Club says that only a cavesson noseband should be used with a Pelham. The reason for this is that in the curb groove, the chin groove, you've already got the curb chain. So if you would try and put a grackle or drop or a flash strap there, you're going to muddle up the action of the bit there. And there's too much going on then in that curb groove, too much pressure on there. However, you will see combinations out on the cross-country course for out eventing or show jumping that are using a flash, a grackle with the Pelham. So this is something to consult with your instructor, so it might be something that they think is suitable for your horse, but ideally you should not be using any type of drop noseband with a Pelham. That's the ideal anyway. Okay, so the top rein causes the bit to act on the corners of the mouth or the lips and on the tongue, and the lower or the curb rein causes the bit to act on the bars, the chin groove and the pole. So ideally the idea is that it performs those 2 duties. Okay. Another member of the Pelham family that looks quite a bit different is the Kimbelwick Bit, which you can see here. So this is a single rein Pelham with a straight bar or a small tongue groove, so you can see that small tongue groove there. So strong ponies sometimes respond well to its fairly mild action. So the idea of the Kimbelwick then is you can either have 1 rein, although when you do that you can either attach it straight onto the bit, or you can see in this particular Kimbelwick you have 2 other options. You can pop your rein and fix it to one part of the bit. Don't know if you can see that there. There are some eyes on the outside of the bit where it's curved, so you could attach your bit there to make it more precise. Again, uses a curb rein, and again useful for strong horses, but without as much of the leverage as your standard Pelham. So that's your Kimbelwick. So those are the 2 main members of the family, the Pelham family. The Pelham itself, and you can get a variety of different mouthpieces for your Pelhams. You can have your straight bar, your half moon. You can have your tongue groove. You can also have jointed ones. So real variety there. And then your Kimbelwick would usually be your straight bar or your half moon, mullen mouth, or your tongue groove as seen in this one here. Okay, so those are your 3 main bitting families. As we touched upon, there's also the Gag Snaffle, that some people put that into another group and call them the Gag family, and there's also the Bitless Bridle family, which we're not covering in this section. But if you want to have a look into bitless bridles, do have a little look on Google, or do ask me when we come back and we can have a look at some bitless bridles. If I find that there's some space in one of my later videos, I will include them for you. Okay. This image is taken from the Widbrook Pony Club hut, and it shows the different families of bits as we've been discussing. So in the table here you can see across the top it shows you what the family name is, so Snaffles, Curbs, the Pelhams, which we've been discussing. They've also included on here gag bits, leverage bits and bitless bridle bits, so if you're interested in finding out a bit more about those, then those are included on there. Down the left hand side it's got some notes with some information, the action of the bit,
and some examples there for you. So that gives you a little bit more information on those. So when we're able to come back after lockdown, this is a really good wall chart to have a look at in the Pony Club hut, as it will give you more information.